Hello everyone, I am Medic Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews under the deck text. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from All Will Be One, Urtet Remnant of Memnarch. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck text, gifts, and more. You could also support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can also join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Urtet is a 2/2 Myr artifact creature for 3 generic. However, since it has an activated ability requiring 1 mana of each color, it has a Wooburg color identity. It has 2 triggered abilities dependent on Myr, making it a very obvious Myr tribal commander. Its first trigger creates a 1/1 Myr token when you cast a Myr spell, and its second trigger untaps each Myr you control at the beginning of your combat phase. This is very powerful because it can untap itself. Since its Wooburg ability requires tapping, you can potentially activate it before combat, then have it untap, and then activate it again in response to the damage step. Unfortunately, you can only activate it during your turn, but at least it's not restricted to sorcery speed activation. Due to this cost to activate it, Jegantha the Wellspring is the deck's companion. There aren't many cards of note that would be left out in order to include Jegantha, especially considering that most of the spells in the deck are solely generic since they're mostly Myr. But thanks to Jegantha, we can activate Urtet by merely tapping, and thanks to some shenanigans in the deck, potentially go infinite too. Since Urtet is essentially another paint by numbers tribal commander, no surprise that almost all of the creatures in the deck are Myr. Let's start off with the Mana Dork Myr. Copper Myr, Gold Myr, Iron Myr, Leaden Myr, Silver Myr, Plague Myr, Myr Convert, Alloy Myr, and Palladium Myr. Not only do these help cast our spells but also activate Urtet. That's because we can tap them along with it at the beginning of our combat step in order to either attack with them or once again activate Urtet for even more +1/+1 counters. As a bonus, Plague Myr has Infect, so it has the potential of taking out an opponent all on its own if it's big enough. Myr Galvanizer is another way to untap all of our Myr, but unfortunately it doesn't untap itself. But that's fine because it's almost like giving us an additional Urtet untap trigger. We can tap all of our mana Myr, activate Urtet, untap them all, do it again, and then Urtet taps all of our Myr, including Myr Galvanizer. This could potentially let us do it twice more. Thanks to this, we have the potential of giving all of our Myr 12 +1/+1 counters in a single turn. The combo potential is so high that Myr Kinsmith is going to almost always tutor for it if you don't already have it. Sure, you can get any other Myr with it, but Myr Galvanizer is by far the best Myr in the entire deck. So much so that Inventor's Sphere is also used to get it. Best of all, it doesn't even take up a slot in the deck. And not only is Myr Kinsmith synergistic in the deck for getting all the benefits of being a Myr, but there are some engines in the deck that take advantage of it as well, which we'll soon see. Darksteel Myr, Hover Myr, Ichorclaw Myr, Knighted Myr, Lodestone Myr, Myr Enforcer, Myr Superior, and Sarcomite Myr are those included for nothing else than to be bodies to send into the fray. These all have their unique traits to making them useful, such as indestructible, flying, etc., or just being big. There aren't many Myr to choose from, but these aren't necessarily the bottom of the barrel. They're just not as useful as the previously mentioned Myr or some of these. Myr Battlesphere, Myr Propagator, Myr Retriever, Myr Custodian, Myr Welder, Parcel Myr, and Shimmer Myr. These aren't that groundbreaking either in terms of utility creatures, but there are Myr and they still get the job done. For one, Myr Battlesphere can not only already on its own make a ton of Myr tokens, but when it attacks it has the potential of dealing a ton of direct damage. This is great when dealing against Pillow Fort decks that won't let you attack with more than one creature, etc. Myr Propagator is better suited for mutate decks and the like, but here it's still amazing. Keep in mind that not only does Myr Galvanizer untap it, but so does our commander. This gives us exponential opportunities of Myr production. Myr Retrieval is great at, well, retrieving artifacts from our graveyard. It does have to die, but at least whenever anyone wipes the board or it dies in combat, we can recover an artifact. Myr Custodian scries us 2 whenever it enters the battlefield, but then each opponent may scry 1. That's not that big of a drawback, and us scrying 2 is still useful. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, we still need a critical mass of Myr. Myr Welder can not only help us against graveyard strategies 1 card at a time, but it will also have all activated abilities of all cards exiled with it. This has the potential of doing some insane things. It's such a fun card as well as being useful. Parcel Myr being a clue means being able to pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. There's really nothing else about it beyond cracking it in a pinch. But it usually never comes down to that. The deck has plenty of card advantage synergies which we'll soon see. Lastly, Shimmer Myr is amazing here at providing a Vidalcan Orrery type effect on a Myr. It is just for artifact spells we cast, but at least it shimmers like a Myr should, yeah. Kudos to anyone who got that Veruca Salt reference. The deck also has some other Myr in the form of shapeshifters. Bloodline Pretender, Mirror Entity, and Glasspool Mimic are absolutely amazing here. Not only did the first two trigger Urtet when cast, but Bloodline Pretender doesn't differentiate between token and non-token creatures entering the battlefield under our control. So for each mirror entering the battlefield, this thing gets a +1/+1 counter. This will get huge, and that's without counting Urtet's activated ability. Speaking of, Mirror Entity making all of our creatures have all creature types before activating Urtet means that all of our creatures get +1/+1 counters for being mirror. Not only that, but that makes Giganta a mirror too, so we can untap it with our commander as well as Mirror Galvanizer. This allows for an insane number of activations. In Flak, Glasspool Mimic, which doesn't even take up a slot in the deck for being an MDFC land, should only ever enter as a land if we're mana screwed, or a copy of Mirror Galvanizer. If we do, they untap each other. If we had Mana Dork mirrors, we can do this infinitely many times, generating infinite mana. Infinite mana that could potentially give us infinitely many Urtet activations. These cards are possibly the best ones in here, along with Mirror Galvanizer and Giganta, of which we always have access to thanks to being Urtet's companion. Coat of Arms is another way of pumping our mirror to ridiculous levels, even more so if we had a mirror entity doing its thing. It's good to have effects redundant to our commander in case it's ever dealt with. And Coat of Arms performs in spades. Just be careful with casting this in a pod against other tribal decks. Mirrodin Besieged and Reflections of Littjara also help bring commander redundancy whenever we cast a mirror. Well, Mirrodin Besieged does it better because it triggers with any artifact spell cast, not necessarily a mirror spell. With Reflections of Littjara, we want to name mirror so we'll get something even better, which is a token copy of that mirror spell we cast. This is another way of helping us go infinite with Mirror Galvanizer by copying it, but it's still amazing at copying any of the deck's key mirror. Speaking of copies, Doubling Season, Primal Vigor, Anointed Possession, Parallel Lives, Adrix and Neve Twin Casters, and Kaya Geist Hunter do just that. It should be no surprise how busted these can be in this deck. They do work with Urtet even though the token creation is a cast trigger because we're not copying the spell, we're simply creating the mirror token off of casting. What they won't work with is Reflections of Littjara, so keep that in mind. Super important. Unfortunately, since Mondrak Glory Dominus has double white in its casting cost, we cannot run it because of Giganta being the companion. But if I had to choose between the two, Giganta is way more useful, and always having access to it in the sideboard is too important to pass up just for another token doubling effect. Granted, a lot of these enchantments have drastically spiked in price, no small part due to tokens being such a popular commander archetype. However, the deck has enough mirror and other synergies that if you don't already have the most expensive ones, nor won't buy them nor proxy them, you don't need them for the deck to run. You can run other utility cards in their place and the deck will still run just fine. Fortunately, Adrix and Neve and Kaya are relatively cheap and can very easily be acquired on a budget. That being said, Doubling Season and Primal Vigor both double the number of tokens created, as well as the number of +1/+1 counters placed, so they're doubly strong here, no pun intended. As for making the most of casting so many seemingly lukewarm mirror, keep in mind that they're easy to cast because they're artifact creatures, so they have the potential of being free, which can then help chain into other synergistic effects such as card draw triggers. These being Canoptic Spider, Guardian Project, Chalain Teller of Tales, Folk Hero, and Vanquisher's Banner. Of these, the Spider, Background, and Banner will only really trigger mostly off of Mirror, which is fine because the deck has plenty of them. Plus, there are other artifact creatures that will also trigger the Spider. Guardian Project and Chalain will trigger off of every non-token creature. Best of all, Chalain will also let us drop a land from our hand whenever we cast a creature spell. If that wasn't enough, he can also bounce a creature to our hand, cementing him as one of the most busted commanders in quite some time. However, Chalain really shines here thanks to Mirror Kinsmith. Since it triggers when it enters the battlefield, thanks to Chalain, we can bounce it back to our hand and then recast it to get another Mirror Tutor trigger. Between Chalain and Mirror Kinsmith, we can potentially get all of our key Mirror into our hand. There aren't many, but getting a Mirror each turn is something to scoff at. And that's assuming we're not drawing into them with all of this engines. Another way the deck makes the most of Chalain is thanks to Journeyer's Kite and Monument to Perfection. Since most of the deck's spells are generically costed, we don't have to worry too much about color fixing, especially with Giganta, the Mirror Mana Dorks, and some assorted Mana Rocks in the deck. But best of all, we can run janky land ramp effects like these. Since they go to our hand, we can play them if we hadn't played a land that turn, or we can drop it in with Chalain. While Journeyer's Kite can only get basic lands, Monument to Perfection can get basics, locusts, and spheres. So far there are only 2 locusts and 9 spheres as of the making of this video, but with also one of each snow-covered basic land and regular basics along with 1 waste in the deck, Monument to Perfection has the potential of getting online very quickly. So not only will it get us lands into our hand, but it can then become a 9/9 beater with Indestructible and Toxic 9 in case things go south. Quite the kooky inclusion in the deck, but it works. Same with the Kite. Cultivate, Kadama's Reach, and Rampant Growth are still included for that land-based ramp though. I'm no fool. They all have 11 targets in the deck, and with Chillane, the first two are even better because we have the potential of getting that second land onto the battlefield thanks to him. Don't worry, Cavern of Souls, Secluded Courtyard, and Unchained Territory, as well as normal rainbow lands like Command Tower, City of Brass, Mana Confluence, Reflecting Pool, and Exotic Orchard are still included though. Not all Mirror are colorless, but even if they were, being able to cast Key Mirror without them being countered is still useful. Between these, the basics, and the spheres, we can still get our colors, especially considering we have Giganta as the companion and Mana Dork Mirror too. Back to card advantage, Armorcraft Judge is absolutely busted here. When we have a board full of creatures with +1/+1 counters on them, this will draw us an insane amount of cards. It can then be bounced with Chillane if we needed to draw more cards. The deck's running Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, and Decanter of Endless Water to make sure we keep our fat hand. These effects being on a land and mana rocks is helpful for the deck in more ways than one. First, the land doesn't take up a slot in the deck, and we already saw the synergy with artifacts. So much so that Enthusiastic Mechanaut, Ethereum Sculptor, Herald's Horn, Urza's Incubator, and Urza Lord Protector also help with mana acceleration by providing cost-reducing effects. Best of all, with the exception of Urza, these are all artifacts, which further synergizes with the deck. Having most of these in play means that almost all of the deck's mirror creatures are free, as well as every other artifact in it. Having all of our artifacts be free, especially artifact creatures, means that we can potentially chain them into more and more cards to draw. Keep in mind that if we're drawing cards for casting creatures or artifact creatures, but we're also casting them for free, then we have an insane value engine going. We can potentially fill our board very quickly, seemingly out of nowhere. The deck is also running the Mindstone and Weakstone since it's also good in the deck regardless if it melds with Urza. It can either draw us 2 cards when entering the battlefield or potentially kill off a creature. It can then tap for double colorless. So does Soul Ring and Ancient Tomb, which are also in the deck. However, the main reason for its inclusion is honestly for melding with Urza. These abilities are just a plus, but getting Urza Planeswalker is not only satisfying but very useful. You still get the artifact spell cost reduction, but other amazing abilities as well, especially his -3 loyalty ability since it works as interaction, exiling any non-land permanent. His ultimate is also pretty busted in this deck since most of the deck's creatures are artifacts, so destroying all non-land permanents while also giving our artifacts and planeswalkers indestructible is yet another way to end the game. The deck is still running Beast Within, Chaos Warp, Generous Gift, Vindicate, and Cyclonic Rift for its instant speed catch-all interaction. Well, Vindicate isn't instant speed, but it's still very useful. Overloading Cyclonic Rift is obviously the key play, whether to protect us from an opposing Alpha Strike or to clear the way for our own Alpha Strike. Same with Boros Charm, Heroic Intervention, and Teferi's Protection. Our main route to victory is combat, so having anyone wipe the board, whether by destruction, exile, bounce, negative toughness, etc., will definitely set up us a bit. Having these at the ready can go a long way. Thankfully, with all of the card advantage synergies in the deck, we should at least have one in hand when it's clutch to need it. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Urtet Remnant of Memnarch. While the deck is pretty straightforward in the sense of just casting Mirror and getting value from that, you could also potentially go infinite more often than not and then overwhelm the board that way. Or you can do it incrementally along with the course of a couple of turns. Or one-shot opponents with a big commander or big infect creature. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of the Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Better Kirby, and happy brewing.